Good Monday makers, it's time to review some community builds, and in this week's episode, we're checking out a flange solution, a greenhouse modification, some 3D printed hacks, garden bed frames, a garden enclosure, and a swingset canopy. All kinds of really cool builds and hacks this week. Let's jump right in and check them out. First up is this flange solution from Randy, and he is no stranger to the MakerPipe community. He shared all kinds of great projects, and he's done a interview with Dave to talk about some of those projects. And he moved and actually transported most of his builds to their new place. And one of the builds that he wanted to move was a weather antenna or weather station, I guess you call it. And he attached it to the side of the house, as you can see here. And the way he did it was with a flange solution that he's been using for a while. He used it the last time he had this set up, and now he's used it again in the new setup. And I really like it. I think it looks really clean, as you can see, attached to the wall. Has just a nice look to it. I don't know, it looks really cool with the angles and everything. And all he did was he used a flange solution that we talked about on the channel a while back, where you just get the off-the-shelf galvanized plumbing flange, and basically you use a washer and a countersunk bolt that goes into a threaded pipe insert that's inside of this short stub here. And by doing that and just doing this short stub, he's just got a 45-degree connector directly attached to it. And then, as you can see there, and then he's got it just perfectly. The length is just perfect, and with an end cap, it sits in there nicely and just sits flush with the connector. And then he adds another 45-degree connector to add the vertical pole that, allows the weather station to go up and stick out at the very top, as you can see there. And I think this looks really clean, and it's a nice and simple solution for doing a flange and for doing a parallel mount. People ask all the time how to do conduit secured to a flat surface in kind of a parallel way. And this is a good option as long as that space between the wall and the conduit, doesn't affect your project or anything. This is a good option. You could just use 45s to create the angle and then use another 45 to kind of offset and then, put the angle back flush with the wall that you're connecting to. So really cool, Randy. Thanks so much for sharing this again. Really great to see, and it's cool to see that you got it set up at your new place too. So thanks for posting that. Next up is a review left by Amelia, and as you can see here, she's got a really long greenhouse. It's 125-foot long, she said, and apparently it's made so you can vent the sides. And she actually found a crank that fits 3/4 inch EMT conduit, and I'd love to know about that crank. That sounds really cool. But basically, you can imagine you just stand on one side and you crank it, and the sides of the greenhouse go up, and they do that to vent the greenhouse if you need to let out some of the heat. And she wanted to basically have one long piece of conduit to go from one end to the other, but conduit can be found in either 5 or 10 foot lengths most commonly. And I think you can get it in like 20-foot lengths as well if you find, like electrical supply place or something that sells it. But she was using 10-foot lengths, so she had to connect, what is that, 12 and a half of them together to be able to have one long continuous piece of conduit. And she said she's been trying for a year all kinds of different solutions. I think she was using some off-the-shelf electrical couplings and was having issues. You can imagine, one long piece like that, if they're like flexing a bunch and moving all separate from each other, it's going to put a lot of stress on the connection point. So she found MakerPipe and used arc coupling to join them together. And then she added self-tapping screws to just reinforce the joint. So it's got the friction that you get from just the connector, being clamped down normally. And then she's got the self-tapping screws through the coupling, and she said it's working out great. She said she's super happy with it, and after a year of trouble, she's finally got her sanity back and has this solution in place, which is really great to hear. And yeah, it's a really cool project. And it's cool that she was able to use the couplings to kind of solve that problem. And yeah, if you're watching, I'd love to know about that crank. It sounds like that could be a cool hack or technique to talk about if you can use a crank in different builds for different things and if it fits 3/4 inch EMT. So thanks so much, Amelia, for sharing this review. Really appreciate it. Next up is a couple of accessories from Billy Shaw. You might remember he's done some really cool stuff. He did the chainsaw mill, he did the baby carrier sled, he did an adjustable canopy, all kinds of just really awesome projects. And he's back again with a 3D printed conduit gate latch and hinge, which is really cool because as he talks about in the video, we've talked about hacks for these things, but there's never really been a solution made specifically for 3/4 inch EMT. And he took it into his own hands to make something. And it's a 3D printed option here that he put together. And the hinge is is really great. It's basically utilizes, I think, a bolt between the two mirrored pieces of the hinge. And yeah, I think he was using a door, like a door hinge pin before, but now he's using bolts in the updated design. And basically, it's just mirrored pieces that bolt to conduit directly and then creates a hinge, which is really great. And then he's also got a latch, as you can see here. See it in action. It closes, and then you can, just pop it open by just you know, raising up the latch and it opens and closes, which is really cool. And that utilizes a bolt as well. So those are really awesome accessories. And then he also showcased in this a drilling jig that he came up with, and he has a whole separate video on these as well. But basically, it just clamps around conduit and has a hole that you can use to get a perfect hole through the conduit through both sides every time, and it just clamps on there. As you can see, he's already got this fence in place and just walked up and added it, made it super simple to add a hole, which is really cool. So all of these accessories are awesome, and he's actually going to be selling these, I believe. I think he says he's either going to sell the 3D print files or might just carry them and then ship them out to people that want them. And maybe it's something that we can partner with him and carry it for him on the store. I don't know. That sounds cool. But yeah, definitely check out his videos and read his descriptions on those videos to reach out to him if you want to purchase some. I think they're going to be really useful for a lot of projects. So thanks so much, Billy, for sharing that. Awesome projects as always. Next up is a few builds from Linda and her husband. I think she said that he built these for her. And basically, they wanted to build some frames that they could utilize for all sorts of different stuff, whether it's going to be trellising for a certain time of year, and then frost protection a certain time of year, and then shade for sun protection for a certain time of year. So they just really wanted to make these frames that they could be modular and versatile based on the time of year and the type of protection or, utility that they need from them. So they just built some boxes around their raised garden beds, and it looks like they just used 90-degree connectors and some different techniques. Basically, this one here is a two-tiered one. Maybe they're going to do something similar like we saw with Heather's trellis from a while back, where there's a trellis on the bottom and then, frost proofing up top or around the whole thing, or maybe it's a combination of both. And then the other one is basically 490-degree connectors to just create a kind of box around it that's a little bit lower to the plants, and it has sunshade mesh on it to protect them from the sun. So this is really cool. Nice and simple projects, but as she said in the review, it's going to be super modular because she can adjust it and add different things based on the time of year and the protection or utility that they need, which is really cool. So thanks so much for sharing that, Linda. Awesome projects. Next up is a build from Rachel, and this is a garden enclosure that she recently built for her garden. And you can see it's very similar to what we saw recently with some garden builds, where it's kind of a box structure around the whole thing using 90-degree connectors. And it looks like she used half-inch EMT conduit with the connectors and appropriate shims to shim them down to half-inch. She also incorporated a gate into the build here. It looks like she just used the T method, where you just take the friction band off and then just swivel them on the pipe. And then she's got some gate latches secured. Looks like just some off-the-shelf kind of fence latcher, or those things you can find pretty regularly and pretty easily. Just drilled directly into the conduit, which works out great. And then she's got the material attached to the frame, looks like with paracord that runs all the way around. And yeah, just a pretty simple structure to what we see pretty often with 90-degree connectors and then some 180-degree connectors in there as well. And it's a really great project to protect her tomato plants. Thanks so much, Rachel, for sharing that. Really great build. Next up is a shade built by Jeff. And as you can see, they've got a beautiful backyard here. And they've got this swing set that I'm sure their kids like to enjoy. Looks like a great place to hang out. And they wanted to add some shade to the people that are swinging underneath. And they did that with conduit and connectors. And basically, they just used adjustable angle flanges attached to the main, column of the swing set. And then those are just angled and they go up to the top. And then they use 90-degree connectors up here to add a long horizontal span that goes up to the other side and connects to a similar pipe that's connected with an adjustable angle flange there as well. Then they just did the same thing on the other side, so it's just mirrored. And basically, the way this is actually really smart because the sunshade is kind of pulling between the two halves. So not only is it secured with the adjustable angle flange, but the two halves are kind of splitting apart naturally without that sunshade. But the sunshade adds another layer of kind of tension to keep it from, dropping down. So they just got that sunshade material between the two stretched, and then there's ball bungees holding it in place. And really simple, just a few connectors, but a really great idea to add some shade to the swing set and a really great place to hang out. So thanks so much, Jeff, for sharing that. Really cool project. And thanks to everybody for posting your builds. As always, if you want to see any of these in more detail, there'll be a link down below. You can also check out the community on our website for more build inspiration and consider subscribing. We do weekly videos with build ideas and hacks and different things. We really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.